Hi, welcome back to Module 3 about considerations in lesson planning. As mentioned in the previous video, today we'll continue talking about some practical principles to address other problems. Very large classes, undisciplined classes, classes with few resources and facilities, and exam classes. Let's start with a very large class. Once in an international teachers group, a Swiss teacher talking about a large class of 25 students. Some of the other participants laughed. "That's not large," said a Japanese teacher. "I regularly teach classes of 55. Some participants gasped. There was a chuckle from a teacher from India. "My largest class has about 120 pupils in it." So I suppose the definition of a large class is one that feels large to you. It sounds familiar to you, right? With a definition like this, we are then mostly thinking of the problems associated with classes that feel too large. These problems include noise, too many people and fixed objects in a restricted space, not enough materials for everyone, not being able to respond to different needs, and difficulty of organizing anything more than lockstep teaching, and the lack of target language use. Each student speaks common languages. Here are some practical principles to work with this type of class. Number 1. Crowd control. Plan to invest plenty of time in learning students' names so that you can nominate individuals. So breaking up the group and having brief one-to-one encounters with lots of different students. Use clear eye contact with individuals. Don't bank on achieving group control by simply speaking more loudly. Use other systems for attracting students' attention, such as hands up, tapping on the board, ringing a little bell, or shaking a tambourine. Remember to explain whichever system you plan to use beforehand. Also work out how you would like students to attract your attention. Plan to establish a certain amount of routine. Don't make the routines too fixed, though, or the class will go into automatic pilot, and it will be very difficult to turn them once they've started. Keep students involved from the start of the lesson so that a working atmosphere is achieved while social energy is high. Number 2. Group work. Contrary to what teachers of smaller groups sometimes think, teachers of large classes need to use pair and group work a lot in order to give students natural oral target language practice and use. When doing group work with large classes, you need to plan it well, otherwise there will be chaos. Plan to attend to all the following points. Make sure that the whole class works together quite well before you consider breaking down into smaller units. Give the smaller units a chance to bond and form an identity. Make sure the tasks you plan are clear. Go through them beforehand to make sure that the instructions are unambiguous, the time given realistic, and the outcome achievable by the group. Number 3. Meaningful tasks. Make sure the tasks are interesting and explain to the students why they are useful. Students need to perceive the value of a task before they feel like putting in time, energy, and commitment, as well as merely always suspending disbelief. Make sure that pair and group tasks involve students' interdependence. This means that no one student can complete the task on their own. They need others to organize, complete, or be graded on the task. Work out who is going to work with whom and how you are going to explain this. Plan clear step-by-step instructions with demonstrations and checks where necessary. Work work out clear timings and how you are going to communicate these. Work out who in the group is going to have what role. For example, one person can act as chair, another as scribe for the task, another as the ideas person. Ask one person to be responsible for writing down the main things that were said during the task work. Plan what you will do yourself during the task work. For example, listen and write correction slips. Remember to give timing warning towards the end of the group work. If you have checked the task beforehand and planned the timing realistically, you should avoid the desperate cry so annoying to students. Stop now, it doesn't matter if you haven't finished. Plan how you will check the work and make students accountable for it. Plan your evaluation stage, which in my view should include not simply an evaluation of language used, but also of task content, how well groups work together, and which mother tongue utterances need translating into target language for next time. This may seem an incomplete list, but the sort of gentle, unstructured task work that seems charming to a small group of adult learners can get you slaughtered in a large class of energetic teenagers. Because large classes are always heterogeneous ones too, you may like to look back to the practical principle for heterogeneous classes, as they may well be relevant to your class too. Another problem the teacher may complain is undisciplined classes. Classes can be difficult for reasons other than the fact the students don't like each other. The group may have very low motivation and concentration. They may arrive late, talk to each other a lot, wander around, display dislike of the teacher, push for confrontation, eat, shout, or ignore you. So here are some practical principles we can consider. Be clear about school regulations and class ground rules. Find out what other teachers in your school do in terms of rules and relationships. Become clear in your own mind about what you like to see in your classes in the categories of movement, talking, safety, materials, social behavior, clothing, and so on. Plan lessons carefully to involve students in productive, interesting work that moves at a reasonable pace and involves a variety of different stimuli, such as pictures, students' own experience, etc. Think ahead to the rewards and punishment strategies you'll use. Now let's move on to another problem, classes with few resources and facilities. The particular sources of anxiety in under-resourced settings can be the seating, boards and display surfaces, and individual student materials. A particular problem of seating can be when the chairs and tables are fixed to each other and screwed to the floor in long rows. It means that the students only see the back of each other's head and aren't able to move or work with more than one other student. And here are a couple of ideas. Don't take the present arrangement for granted. Study the face and the placing of the seats and display surfaces, and see if you can improve on the layout of the room. If moving seats and boards is not possible, look at the different possible configurations of students to get them used to turning round, passing things up road, etc. Another problem may be individual student materials. There may not be enough books or copying facilities available. Here are a few helpful solutions. You can ask students to share material, but make sure you teach them how to say things like, "Can I share?" and "What page is it?" You can make more use of dictation and reusable activity packs. You can use the central display surface for writing up questions and tasks, as well as for math and review and change the order activity and force students writing. You can ask students to bring in materials such as pictures and objects. Also, ask them to generate materials of their own in class by drawing, making word displays, writing out roll cards, and so on. The next variable is not really a problem, but a type of class that many of us are dealing with: exam class. If students are working towards an exam, the advantages are that the syllabus is external and thus clear and already written for you. The learners' aims are clear too, since most of them will want to cover the syllabus and pass the exam. This gives a certain amount of motivation. There are usually lots of practice materials available commercially, so you probably won't have to make your own. There are disadvantages to exam classes though. Students may be nowhere near the level necessary to pass the exam. An over-concentration on exam technique can lead to too little actual language learning and an unbalanced diet of exam-type tasks. Here are some practical principles to bear in mind when planning work with exam classes. First, transparency. Give students the syllabus and set a real exam so that there is no misconception about what they will face. Show them all the questions and task types. Make sure students know the names of all the main types of exercise such as close, etc., and the vocabulary in all the rubrics like cross out, fill in, underline. When looking at tests and discussing answers, always try to help students understand why a particular answer was wrong and not simply that it was wrong. Second, similarity. Whatever the exam the students are working towards is based on, make sure that you plan plenty of work in class that is similar. For example, if the exam is based, as many are today, on authentic material, for example, reading comprehension questions based on newspaper articles or public notices, orals with native speakers, listening tests devised from radio programs, etc. Provide plenty of authentic material, a wide range of text types, practice in all 4 skills and a wide range of vocabulary and structures. Do plenty of pair work if there is an interview component to the exam. And third, get students in the study mood. Give homework and encourage students to keep their old work. This is so they can periodically go through the corrected papers, see how they are improving, and make a list of their favorite mistakes. Keep a note yourself of the homework you've set so that you remember to correct it in. Encourage students to keep learning diary so they can see how useful the class is even if they don't end up passing the exam. Encourage them to become more independent in their use of dictionary and grammar reference books, and also encourage student-to-student and student self-correction. Fourth, balance. When you're doing exam exercises, point out how useful the work is for other things apart from the exam. Do plenty of work which is not aimed at a particular section of the exam. Point out how essential it is for real life and exam to keep learning, for example, vocabulary, and to gain cultural and general knowledge from extensive listening and reading. Thus, students will see that exam preparation can be good general learning, and general learning can be useful for the exam. Finally, exam tips. Plan in time to develop good exam strategy. Show students how to time their work, plan it, proofread it, and check it for their own favorite mistakes. To sum up, we've talked about some other ways to address very large classes and undisciplined classes. We also discussed some problems and solutions related to under-resourced settings and exam classes. Thanks for watching and see you again in the next video.